Right now, a voice is narrating your life. A steady stream running under everything you do, and you never asked it to. If this finds you, your awakening begins now. Before you read another sentence, do one small thing. Set a timer for 60 seconds. Try not to think. No analysis, no inner commentary, just a quiet waiting for the mind to stop. Notice what happens. Whatever shows up during that minute is the evidence you need. When the timer ends, write one line in a note. What was the first image, phrase, feeling, or name that appeared? Pause here and do it now. Set the timer. Try not to think. When you finish, write a single line about what appeared. If you're not able to pause right now, keep going. You'll be invited back in a moment. If you have a history of intrusive thoughts or serious mental health conditions, consider doing shorter steps in a safe space or with support. These practices are generally gentle but can surface strong material. If your minute was quiet, notice how strange that felt. If your minute filled up with voices, worries, plans, images, or judgments, notice that too. Either way, the same discovery waits. Thoughts arise on their own. They are events in your field of awareness, not commands from a true self that must obey. This is the first destabilizing data point for awakening. It's simple and immediate. You do not have to be the content of your thinking. The map I'm giving you is called the 7 souls, 7 interlocking aspects of how interior life operates, and 7 practical paths to change your relationship to your experience. They are not metaphysical absolutes. They are lenses and exercises you can verify for yourself. Over the next weeks, each soul will be a checkpoint. Define the trap, name the mechanism, try a reproducible practice, and record what shifts. Here's the list so you know the route we're taking. Soul 1, the stream soul. Soul 2, the pattern soul. Soul 3, the heart soul. Soul 4, the collective soul. Soul 5, the reality soul. Soul 6, the identity soul. Soul 7, the integrator soul. Today we begin at the river, the stream soul, and move into the code-level patterns that churn under it. We'll start with what you just experienced in that minute, then trace backward, why thoughts recur, where they come from, and what small, measurable practices actually loosen their hold. Why this matters: most of what you feel, decide, and expect is shaped by that stream. When you automatically identify with its content, your entire life, choices, relationships, how you interpret events, narrows to fit recycled material. When you step out of identifying with the stream, you change the broadcast you send out into the world. That's a practical, not mystical claim. You will notice it first as inner clarity, then as a subtle difference in how events unfold, often visible in the records you keep, your journal, your relationships, your work output. A quick note about science and humility.
Benjamin Libet's experiments and others in cognitive neuroscience show that some brain processes related to preparation and readiness appear before we become consciously aware of deciding. Researchers interpret this in different ways, and I'm not saying those findings erase free will. Instead, they highlight a simpler point. Conscious awareness often lags behind the machinery that produces thought and intention. That gap is where metacognition, the ability to observe your thinking, becomes a skill. HeartMath's work on heart-brain coherence suggests that patterns of physiology and emotion influence cognitive states. Again, not a miracle lever, but a useful metaphor and a set of measurable correlations. And when I use metaphors like field or observation effect, treat them as bridges, evocative ways to describe how attention, physiology, and social input shape experience, not literal claims about quantum causation. Soul 1, the stream soul, thought as background, the radio. Imagine your awareness as the clear sky, and thoughts as clouds passing across it. Some clouds are light and playful, some are dense, gray, repeating. Most of the day you live under the assumption that a particularly loud cloud, an anxious thought, an old story, is the sky itself. The stream soul is the habitual identification with that continuous inner narrative. It's the automatic I that speaks before you decide to speak. What it creates? Reactivity, conflated identity, a narrowed sense of possibility. You get pulled into arguments before you check whether the argument is yours. You replay a conversation and live inside the emotional aftermath. Because the stream repeats, you think you are fixed, a personality made by those recurring lines, when in fact you are a field that hosts them. An accessible science-backed insight. The mind generates spontaneous patterns as part of its baseline operation. Neuroscience refers to spontaneous neural activity and default modes that loop in the absence of task-related input. Libet-type findings show that parts of the brain begin preparing actions before conscious awareness. Taken together, these lines suggest that conscious thought often follows neural processes. The practical implication? If you can learn to notice the stream, you can choose whether to identify with it. Practice. 60-second experiment. The micro-proof you already did. Frequency. Do this as an instant check anytime you doubt the idea. Duration. 60 seconds. What to do? Set a timer for 60 seconds. Intentionally try not to produce internal commentary. When thoughts arise, and they will, notice them as events in awareness. Label the first one you notice silently. Thinking, planning, worry, or simply thought. After the minute, write one line about the first thing that appeared. Why this matters? The point isn't to stop thoughts permanently. It's to experience them as appearances. That tiny experiment creates a neural context where observation becomes primary. Over time, those brief recognitions reduce automatic reactivity. Practice. Thought labeling, the early training wheels. Frequency. Daily. Duration. 5 minutes each morning for 7 consecutive days. How to do it. 1. Sit in a comfortable chair with a notebook nearby. 2. Set a 5-minute timer. 3. Each time a thought or feeling arises, label it with one word. Planning, worry, remembering, judging, fantasy, boredom. Say the labels silently, then return to open presence. 4. At the end, jot one sentence about any pattern you noticed. Expect resistance. Your mind will tell you the labeling is silly or that you're not doing it right. That's the stream speaking. Keep going. A short example. Day 3 journal entry. Morning labeling, 5 minutes. Labels: to do, lonely, critique, story. Notice that critique always appears when I check email. Reflection. The eigenfrequency of my work anxiety shows up as a critique cloud linked to email, a signal I can now set up a ritual around. Why journaling matters right away. It externalizes the stream. Writing a one-line observation after each practice turns private noise into data. Over 7 days, you start to see frequency and triggers. This is the first step of a verifiable experiment. Change in observation, change in relation, measurable shift in felt reactivity. Mini-hook. When a thought repeats, ask, where did it first come from? The answer will be the doorway into the pattern soul. How the stream soul traps you in daily life. In relationships, you respond to an internal script about what your partner should be, rather than to what's actually happening. That script tends to be older voices, cultural narratives, or past betrayals. In work, you take a harsh inner critic as a productivity driver, which paradoxically reduces creativity. In health, you interpret aches and sensations through a story of worry, amplifying the body-mind feedback loop. A short narrative. Lena's radio dial. Lena had the kind of inner narrative that arranged her life into neat categories: anxious, defensive, striving. She thought it was hers. After a week of 5-minute labeling sessions and the 60-second checks at unpredictable moments, Lena began to notice a pattern. The voice that shouted "not enough" always came after she scrolled through social media. The labels revealed timing and origin. She redesigned her morning, no social scrolling before labeling, and within a month the "not enough" cloud showed up half as often on mornings. Not miraculous, but measurable. Transition. The stream soul's next neighbor is the pattern soul, the deeper code that recycles material into habitual loops. Stream is the surface, pattern is the engine. To change the surface reaction, you often need to inspect the source code.
Soul 2. The pattern soul. Source code, the prediction machine. Once you accept that thoughts bubble up independent of your volition, the next step is to ask, why these thoughts? Why these images, worries, or fantasies over and over? The pattern soul names the brain's predictive architecture, a machine that learns from past data and replays successful patterns to make sense of the world. It's efficient. It's not moral. It seeks to anticipate and reduce surprise. What it creates? Recurrent scripts that feel inevitable. These scripts show up as mood loops, habitual reactions, or replayed scenes.
Because the prediction machine prioritizes energy-efficient pathways, it will favor the familiar even when that familiar pattern is painful or limiting. A science-grounded insight. Predictive processing models in neuroscience suggest that perception is largely the brain's best guess based on prior information. When old predictions are strong, they bias sensory interpretation and emotional response. That's why two people can witness the same event and experience it completely differently. Their priors, their pattern weights, differ. The practical implication. By tracing the origin of recurring thoughts and gently updating the prediction weights with new experiences and observation, you weaken the automatic loop. Practice. Source tracking. Frequency. Apply whenever a charged recurring thought appears. Do this consistently for 14 days. Duration. Brief interventions in the moment, weekly reflections of 10 to 15 minutes. Steps. When a charged thought arises, for example, "I'll never be respected," stop and label it. Pattern. Ask internally, where did this first appear? You may get a memory, a voice, an image of someone, parent, teacher, cultural message, a humiliating event. Don't force. Notice what naturally surfaces. Note the answer in your journal with a one-sentence time-stamped line. Date, time, the thought, the origin. Ask, is this origin still true now? Often the answer will be partially, in context, or not at all. At the end of the week, review the entries to look for repeat origins and note how frequently particular sources appear. Caveat: sometimes charged thoughts are linked to trauma. If the origin feels destabilizing or overwhelming, pause and seek professional support. A short example: source tracking entries, 2-week sample. Day 2, 9:17 a.m. Thought, "I'm not good enough." Origin, memory of teacher's comment in class at age 12. Reflection, same phrasing. Not true now, old stage, not present stage. Day 6, 3:45 p.m. Thought, "I must hustle or I'll fail." Origin, family stories about scarcity. Reflection, habit formed early. Energy spent on constant urgency rather than aligned action. Weekly review. 2 large sources, early criticism and scarcity narrative. Both repeat when deadlines or money topics arise.
Why this works. The brain updates its priors when prediction errors accumulate, when the expected outcome differs from sensory feedback. Source tracking creates a series of gentle prediction errors by making visible the mismatch between past origins and present reality. Documenting the mismatch in a journal gives the brain concrete evidence to adjust. Mini-hook. Trace one thought back as far as you can. If the origin is a voice or an image, breathe into it and ask a clarifying question. Was that true then? Is it true now? Practice variation. Pattern rescripting. Daily, 5 to 10 minutes. After tracking sources for several days, take 5 to 10 minutes to write a counter-story next to the original note. For each recorded origin, write one present-tense embodied fact that contradicts the old script. Keep it short. My work includes long-term growth, not immediate perfection. Read it aloud slowly, breathe, and notice the felt change. Frequency. Daily for 14 days, especially after source tracking moments. Why rescripting is effective. You are providing alternative data points that the prediction machine can use. Over time, these alternatives get weighted and the probability of the old prediction decreases. A compact story. Marcus and the loop that ran him. Marcus kept getting the same anxious thought before every meeting. You'll forget the key point. You'll be judged. Tracing the origin, he found a high school debate loss that had been traumatic. The more he noted the memory, the less automatic the anxiety became. He started a micro-ritual. Before each meeting, Marcus would read aloud a single rescripted sentence for 30 seconds. "I am prepared enough to begin. The rest is fluid." After 3 weeks, the dread reduced significantly. He reported a 40% drop in anticipatory heart rate in his own notes. Anecdotal? Yes. Useful? Clearly. A cautionary nuance. Not all repetitive thoughts are harmless stories. Some can be symptoms of clinical conditions like OCD or severe mood disorders. If patterns are disabling or intrusive in ways that interfere with safety or functioning, professional intervention is appropriate. These practices are complementary tools, not substitutes for clinical care. Mini-hook between souls. If the pattern soul is the code, there's a transmitter that amplifies or dampens it. That's the heart soul. The way you are physiologically keyed often sets the gain on the prediction machine. Before we move on, let's connect the stream and pattern souls practically. The stream makes the pattern feel immediate. The pattern gives the stream its recurring script, intervening at 2 points: observation, labeling, and source correction, tracking and rescripting. Creates a powerful double action: immediate dissociation from thought and medium-term recalibration of what the mind expects. Practical micro-protocol you can start today. Morning, 5 minutes of labeling, stream practice.
Day. When a charged thought appears, do a quick source tracking note, just 1 line. If you can't stop, label it pattern and commit to a 10-minute weekly reflection. Evening, write one sentence about any changes you noticed in how often a particular thought appeared. If you do this consistently for 2 weeks, you will have a record of frequency and origin. That record is the evidence you need to decide whether to continue with the deeper practices in the next souls. A small experimental diary entry to illustrate cumulative effect. Day 1, 60-second micro-experiment. Wrote work worry. Morning labeling, dominant label, planning. Source tracking, teacher criticism. Day 7, repeated labeling shows planning still frequent but less fused with self. Weekly review, teacher criticism appears 3 times. Wrote rescript, I choose growth over judgment. Day 14, meetings feel less loaded. Thought frequency reduced on mornings. Not a miracle, a measurable change. We've now taken 2 steps away from automaticity, noticing that thoughts appear and tracing where they came from. The third move is to examine how your body and its rhythms affect both the stream and the pattern. That's the heart soul, how your physiological field broadcasts and receives signals, and how small coherence practices can modulate the gain on your whole system. We'll begin that exploration, but first, one more anchor, a brief orientation to metacognition. The word simply means thinking about thinking. It's what you did during the 60-second experiment. It's the skill underlying all these practices. You don't need to be a philosopher to cultivate it. You need consistent, kind attention and a way to record what changes. If you kept your note from the first minute, open it now and look at the single line. That single line is your starting point, your baseline. Over the coming days, return to it. Add a new line after each practice. Within 30 days, you'll have a track record you can look back on. That record is the proof that awakening here is measurable. More observation, less fusion, clearer choice. We're ready to enter the heart soul, which asks a slightly different question. Not just where did the thought come from, but how is your body amplifying it? How does your physiology broadcast the inner state into the world like a radio transmitter? To answer that, we need a metaphor and a micro-practice. The metaphor, your chest and nervous system as a field. Heart math research suggests that heart rhythms correlate with emotional states, and that certain breathing and attention patterns shift coherent patterns in the autonomic nervous system. Think of coherence as the dial on your radio transmitter. A jittery signal broadcasts chaotic interpretations. A coherent signal stabilizes perception. Practice, awareness anchor, intro. Frequency, twice daily. Duration, 10 minutes each session. Steps, simple version to begin. Sit quietly and place a hand over your heart.
2. Breathe slowly for 5 minutes with an even inhale-exhale tempo. Find what's natural. Aim for a calm rhythm. 3. Bring to mind a neutral or mildly positive image, a memory of a steady moment. 4. Allow the body to settle and notice whether thoughts slow or change tone. Purpose. Build a felt baseline of physiological calm that reduces the gain on habitual patterns. A brief example. Naomi's 2-break fast. Naomi did 2 10-minute anchors every day for 3 weeks. She noticed that she felt less reactive before conversations that used to trigger her defensive cloud. She didn't stop having critical thoughts, but the bodily urgency around them softened. Her nightly notes said, "Anchor session morning, less tight chest before team call." We're going to pause here. You've now practiced the 60-second experiment, you've been introduced to labeling and source tracking, you've seen why the predictive brain tends to recycle, and you've had a first taste of an awareness anchor to modulate the body. These are the first 3 souls taking shape: stream, pattern, and heart. What I want you to do before we continue is simple and vital. In the next 24 hours, 1. Repeat the 60-second micro-experiment at least once more and add a 1-line note about any difference from the first time. 2. Do the 5-minute labeling practice tomorrow morning. 3. If a charged thought arises during the day, write a single source tracking line in a notebook. These 3 micro-actions create data. Awakening here is not a sudden enlightenment, it's a disciplined gathering of evidence. Small practices that let you test the claim that you are not your thoughts. The world often responds to that shift, but the response is probabilistic and contextual. You may notice calmer relationships, clearer decision-making, or simply a quieter internal space. All of those are valid and useful. There is an important caveat. None of these practices promise cures or instant miracles. They do not replace professional care. If your mind generates thoughts that are intrusive, violent, or profoundly disabling, seek a clinician. These tools can sit alongside therapy or medication, but they are not a replacement.
We will return to the heart soul and then move on to the collective soul, which explores how media and culture populate your stream with borrowed narratives. But before we go there, listen for one small sign in your days. The first time you notice a thought and choose to label it instead of reacting. That moment, trivial as it may seem, is the seed of a different life. Keep a one-line record of it. If this finds you now, your awakening begins with that single choice. When you're ready, prepare to deepen the heart-soul practices. We will add coherence techniques and show how your field broadcasts into the social environment, and then investigate the collective soul's habit of topping up your stream with other people's audio.
The path from noticing to changing is incremental, and each soul we explore is a lever. The next lever is about how the heart and body tune the dial, and how that tuning alters what your pattern machine expects. Soul 3, the heart soul, field broadcast and coherence practice. We left the stream and traced the pattern. Now notice how the same thoughts feel different depending on how your body is keyed. The heart soul names that transmitter. It's not mystical language. It's a way to describe how your physiology, your breath, heart rhythm, posture, sets the gain on your mental radio. When your system is jittery, the same thought sounds amplified. When your system is settled, the same thought arrives like a distant cloud. A modest science note. Research from groups like HeartMath describes correlations between heart rhythm patterns and cognitive emotional states. Those studies don't prove magic. They show that changing breathing and attention patterns alters measurable physiology and often correlates with clearer cognition and better self-regulation. Treat the idea as practical. Your body shapes your experience. Shifting body state shifts how thoughts feel, and therefore how strongly you act on them. Deepening the awareness anchor, coherence protocol. Frequency, twice daily, ideally morning and evening. Duration, 10 minutes per session. Commit to at least 21 consecutive days to allow pattern change. Steps. 1. Find a quiet seat and place a hand gently over the center of your chest. 2. Soften the jaw and let the shoulders release. 3. Breathe slowly, in a rhythm that feels calm but not forced. Aim for longer exhales than inhales if that's comfortable. 4. As you breathe, place your attention on the area your hand rests on. Feel the subtle movement, the warmth, a pressure. Let sensation be primary. 5. Bring to mind a neutral, steady image, a place where you felt safe or simply steady breathing. Hold it lightly. 6. If thoughts come, notice them as passing textures. Label if you like, thinking, feeling, or remembering. Return to the heartbeat sensation. 7. After 10 minutes, write one line. What changed in your felt intensity when you returned to breath and heart attention? Micro-variations and applications. Pre-action anchor. Before a difficult conversation or presentation, do a single 2-minute coherence breath while placing a hand on your chest. Notice whether anxiety's volume lowers. Heart-focused check-ins. 3 times during the day. Pause for 30 to 60 seconds to breathe and recenter attention on the heart area. No need for elaborate ritual. A simple recalibration often blunts reactivity. Optional biofeedback. If you have access to HRV tools, use them as objective feedback. Don't treat numbers as righteousness. Use them as rehearsal data, small objective signs that your practice can shift physiology. Why this matters practically. When your body attenuates the urgency of a thought, the prediction machine does not prioritize it as strongly. A worry that once triggered a cascade now shows up with less emotional voltage. That reduced voltage makes source tracking easier and weakens the stream's claim on identity. You're not trying to eliminate emotion, you're lowering its signal-to-noise ratio so you can choose more often. Example, Omar's coherence habit. Omar noticed his performance dread always peaked before stand-ups. He started 2 10-minute anchors daily and a 1-minute pre-stand-up breath. His nightly notes after 3 weeks read, "Stand-up dread still appears, but no longer hijacks my morning. I start with a clear question, not panic." He logged fewer stomach tension notes and rated pre-meeting anxiety 3 out of 10 instead of 7 out of 10. He didn't conjure away anxiety. He turned down the dial long enough to make different choices. A cautionary note. If heart-focused attention surfaces strong material, trauma memories, or intense sensations, slow down the practice. Shorter sessions, an external support person, or a clinician's guidance may be appropriate. These coherence practices are supportive tools, not trauma therapy. Transition.
Once you have some skill in modulating your physiological gain, the next large issue is the content that's fed into your stream from outside. This is where the collective soul shows up. Soul 4, the collective soul, the thought pool and cultural feed. Much of what floats through your stream isn't original. It's broadcast into your inner radio from culture, news cycles, social media, family narratives, workplace chatter. The collective soul names that shared field, the pool of circulating ideas and affect that your nervous system absorbs when it's not protected by boundaries and filters. What it creates: a steady top-up of other people's anxieties and priorities, adoption of scripts that feel personal but trace back to collective narratives, sensitivity to mood contagion. When a culture is anxious, your baseline creaks towards anxiety even absent personal triggers. A science-grounded insight. Social neuroscience finds predictable patterns of emotional contagion and social influence. Media creates repeated exposures that alter what the prediction machine considers normal. The more often your system encounters a theme, scarcity, outrage, perfection standards, the more it adjusts its priors accordingly. The practical implication: curating exposure and practicing nightly categorization lowers the passive absorption. Practice: evening thought categorization. Frequency: nightly. Duration: 10 minutes per session for 21 consecutive days to form a habit. Steps: before bed, open your journal and list the prominent thoughts, images, or emotions that recurred during the day. 3 to 5 items is fine. For each item, tag its origin: personal, P; collective, C; ambiguous, A. If it came after scrolling, tag C. If it sounded like your parent or a specific memory, tag P. 3. Note the trigger if you can: app, conversation, headline, deadline. 4. Write one line about how you might limit or change the exposure tomorrow, e.g., no news until after labeling, mute this account, ask partner for directness instead of assuming. 5. Once a week, review the logs and note recurring collective sources. Consider concrete boundaries, time limits, curated feeds, replacement rituals, reading, walking. Why this works: categorization externalizes the feed and shows patterns. When you can see that much of your morning anxiety follows 15 minutes of scrolling, the choice to change becomes simple. The prediction machine then receives fewer reinforcing collective inputs and updates its priors away from cultural noise. Practice variation, feed redesign, 7-day reset. For 7 days, intentionally limit exposure to content that fuels high-frequency collective tags. Replace that window with a micro-habit that supports coherence, e.g. a 10-minute walk, labeling practice, or a short podcast that models calm. Document before and after differences in your nightly categorization. Example: Priya's 21-day clearing. Priya discovered that a steady undercurrent of not enough came directly from an influencer's curated feed. After a 21-day categorization and feed redesign, her tag log showed a 60% drop in entries tagged collective. Her daytime labeling sessions had fewer envy labels. She reported feeling freer to choose work tasks rather than imitation. Small structural changes to guard the field. Set time windows for news and social media. Avoid exposure immediately on waking. Curate follows. Unfollow or mute sources that consistently create high arousal states. Create an intentional incoming ritual. If you must consume media, do a 2-minute coherence breath first to lower the gain and listen with more clarity. A community dimension. Sometimes the collective soul is friendly. Friends, communities, movements that uplift. The point is not to live in isolation, but to be discerning. The collective field can be nourishing or draining. Categorize to notice which is which. Transition. By managing exposure and physiological gain, you start to see how your internal field and your external environment interact. The next step is to test whether altering identification with thought actually correlates with different external events, what we call the reality soul. Soul 5, the reality soul: observation, non-identification, and the journaled experiment. This is the place where your inner shift meets external data. The reality soul addresses a practical question: if I stop identifying so strongly with certain thoughts, does the world behave differently? The answer is sometimes, and often in ways that are measurable. But notice the hedging: not always, not magically.
What changes reliably is your perception, your choices, and therefore the probability space you inhabit. An explanatory note about language. When people say reality responds, they usually mean that your behavior, attention, and choices, shaped by inner state, alter the inputs and outcomes you experience. That's a psychobiological and social fact. It's not necessarily a quantum law of intention. Keep the metaphor as helpful. Attention shapes probability by shaping action and perception. Practice: Reality Response Journal, 30-day program.
Structure and purpose. A 30-day, 4-phase program designed to create baseline data, apply non-identification strategies, and document shifts. Trackable metrics include mood rating, 1 to 10, number of triggered reactivity events, one chosen outcome metric, for example, number of productive hours, number of calm conversations, and qualitative notes about notable events, opportunities, surprises, relational tone. Phases and steps. Days 1 to 7, baseline. Each morning write date, mood rating, 1 to 10, and intention for the day, 1 line. Each evening record 3 notable thoughts or events, 1 line on whether you identified with thoughts, yes or no, and any outcomes linked to the day's choices. No intervention yet, just observe to gather baseline data. Days 8 to 14, recognition and non-identification. Continue daily mood rating and evening notes. Apply the 60-second micro-experiment when you notice high arousal. Use thought labeling 5 minutes morning to create a buffer between thought and reaction. Log any moments when you notice choosing differently because you observed rather than fused. Days 15 to 21, intention and action. Add a simple intention linked to an outcome metric. For example, I will have 1 calm conversation about money this week. Practice source tracking on any resistant thoughts before acting. Note events that you would have reacted to differently. Record outcome metric daily. Days 22 to 30, documentation and review. Compare averages, mood rating baseline versus current, frequency of high reactivity events, progress on outcome metric. Write a short findings paragraph on day 30 summarizing changes, surprises, and next steps. Guidelines for measurement. Be honest and simple with metrics. Choose one outcome metric that matters and is observable. For example, hours spent uninterrupted on deep work, number of difficult conversations that ended without escalation. Use the mood rating daily for quick trend detection. Don't get lost in numbers. The narrative notes are often the most revealing. Why this is scientific in spirit. You are setting up a self-experiment, baseline measurement, intervention, repeated measurement. That's the core of evidence-based practice. Even if you are not a scientist, you can treat your life like a laboratory. The journal becomes the objective record, reducing the fog of retrospective bias.
Example 30-day snapshot. Baseline week average mood, 5.2. Week 2 average mood, 5.6, after labeling plus anchor. Week 3 average mood, 6.1, after intentional actions and source tracking. Outcome metric, calm conversations per week. Baseline 1 to week 4, 3. Day 30 summary, less fused with anxious forecast. Noticed more options in meetings. Tracked 2 examples where non-identification allowed me to ask for clarification instead of reacting. Mini case, Javier's probability shift. Javier tracked a career outcome metric, number of high-quality client leads he initiated. Baseline week showed an average of 0 to 1 leads. After 2 weeks of anchoring and source tracking on scarcity narratives, he intentionally reached out to 3 people he admired. 2 responses rekindled relationships, yielding 1 lead by week 4. He credited it not to mystical manifesting but to reduced avoidance and clearer, less reactive outreach. The journal showed the mechanism: fewer avoidance glots, more follow-through. Practice nuance, expectation management. This is crucial. You will not get consistent magical results. The likely effects are subtle and probabilistic. Clearer perception, different choices, slightly changed circumstances that accumulate. Track, measure, and let data, not hope, guide continuation. Transition. As you document reality responding, you'll notice a deeper question. Who is doing the observing? That's the identity soul work, the heart of recalibrating who you believe you are. Soul 6, the identity soul. Who are you when thought is quiet? Many spiritual and psychological traditions return to this central question. The identity soul invites you to map the contours of selfhood and to shift identification from a stream of content to the awareness that hosts it. This is the most intimate and gradual work, the place where small behavioral experiments become identity rehearsal. A practical phased 30-day protocol. Phase 1, days 1 to 7, the I am inventory. Morning, write a list of 20 I am statements as they currently feel. Include the obvious, I am a parent, I am a manager, and the felt ones, I am anxious, I am behind. Evening, choose 3 statements that repeat and ask, where do these originate? Tag them personal or collective. Phase 2, days 8 to 14, source investigation. For 3 recurring I am statements, do a deeper source tracking session, 10 to 15 minutes each. Write a short counterstatement next to each. For example, old, I am always late. New, I am someone who plans time with margin. Phase 3, days 15 to 21, awareness recognition. Daily, practice a 2-minute I am noticing exercise. In a quiet moment, say silently, I am noticing, and list 3 current experiences, a sound, a thought, a sensation. Let the word I refer to immediate noticing, not the story. Journal, note the felt difference between I am anxious and I am noticing anxiety. Phase 4, days 22 through 30, embodiment and rehearsal. Select 2 new I am statements you want to embody, one personal, one relational. Create micro-behaviors that align: posture, small speech patterns, scheduling choices, wardrobe choices, boundary-setting phrases. Experiment publicly in low-stakes contexts and journal the results. Exercises for embodiment. Posture experiment. For 5 days, adopt a small embodied cue for the new identity, e.g., standing with chest open and shoulders relaxed when beginning a meeting. Record any shifts in tone or reaction. Voice experiment. Practice a single gentle phrase that aligns with a new identity, such as, "My priority now is clarity." Use it when appropriate and note how people respond. Micro-behavior test. Pick one context, email replies, negotiation, family dinner, and enact a small behavior consistent with the embodied I am. Journal one line on how it felt and what changed. Why repetition matters. Identity isn't an idea only, it's patterning, muscle memory, posture, linguistic habits, and choices. The brain rewires slowly through repeated acts. When you act from a small version of a new identity, the system begins to shift to support it. Example, Hannah's identity rehearsal. Hannah's list began, "I am anxious, I am accommodating, I am over-responsible." She selected, "I am someone who sets healthy boundaries" as a rehearsal identity. For 3 weeks, she practiced one sentence at the start of meetings. "I want us to be efficient. I'll keep notes and follow up." It wasn't flashy, but colleagues began to treat her differently. Her journal tracked the shift: more respect, fewer interruptions, and a felt internal solidity. A safety and nuance note. Identity work can unearth dissonance and occasionally loss. Letting go of a long-held identity can create grief. Move with gentleness and, if needed, support. For people with identity disturbances or significant trauma, work with a clinician alongside these practices. Transition. Identity rehearsal prepares you for sustained living from awareness. That's the job of the integrator soul, the daily architecture that holds the other practices together. Soul 7, the integrator soul, embodiment and daily rhythm. The integrator soul is where the map becomes a lived route. It's not a final destination, it's a rhythm. The goal is simple: create a daily architecture that sustains clarity, reduces automatic reactivity, and channels attention to what matters. Core morning routine, 20 minutes. Purpose, a compact, reproducible sequence that establishes a field of awareness for the day. Duration, 20 minutes each morning. If time is tight, do at least 10 by focusing on key segments. Structure, minute ranges or guideposts. 1 to 5, awareness check. Sit, breathe, and register 3 facts. 1 sensory, 1 emotion, 1 thought. Label each plainly.
6 to 10, thought observation. 5 minutes of gentle labeling practice. Notice thoughts and tag them as planning, worry, memory, fantasy. 11 to 15, sensation observation. Body scan. Notice areas of tension. Breathe into them. Soften. 16 to 20, reality preview. Set a one-line intention for the day and envision one desired action that aligns with the intention. Throughout the day practices. Microchecks. Stop 3 times a day for a 1-minute coherence breath and a quick label. Pre-meeting ritual. 1-minute hand-on-heart breath. Set a clear question to guide presence. Social filters. Use a pre-commitment. I will check social media only twice today at X and Y times. Replace empty scrolling with a 5-minute walk or labeling. Evening review. 10-minute categorization practice, see Soul 4, and a short gratitude note, 1 line. Weekly integration session, 30 to 45 minutes. Review journals from the week. Notice patterns. What increased, what decreased. Plan micro adjustments for the next week. Sleep, exposure, rehearsal targets. Monthly review, 60 minutes. Review your 30-day reality response journal and identity inventory. Note measurable shifts and surprising correlations. Set a single theme for the next month, e.g., deepen heart coherence, public embodiment, reduce collective exposure. Example week of integrated practice. Morning routine daily, 20 minutes. 2 10-minute anchors midday and evening on Tuesday and Thursday. Thought labeling 5 minutes every morning. Source tracking for charged thoughts during work. Evening 10-minute categorization nightly. Weekly integration session Sunday, 30 minutes to plan next week. Why integration matters. Without rhythmic practice, insights fade. Integration ties micro practices into macro change. Imagine each soul as a lever. Small, consistent turns accumulate into a shifted life trajectory. Climax, a guided recognition, noticing awareness itself. This is not an exalted promise. It's a method to help you verify for yourself the basic claim at the heart of the 7 souls. Thoughts are phenomena in awareness, not the totality of who you are. The goal here is a direct experiential check that you can repeat with measurable effect. Preparation. Sit comfortably. Have your journal and a pen within reach. If you can, set a simple timer for 2 minutes. This is optional but helpful for practice. If you prefer not to use a timer, simply notice the transition from one step to the next. Steps. Grounding. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take 3 breaths, longer on the out-breath, and feel the weight of your body on the seat or floor. Sense scan. Notice one sound in the room, one sensation in the body, and one thought as if each were separate items on a table. Name them softly. Sound, sensation, thought. Shift to noticing. Now notice the act of noticing. As thoughts come, instead of following them, think, I am noticing thought.
As sensations arise, think, I am noticing sensation. Do this for 1 to 2 minutes. Contrast question. Ask gently, can the noticing be aware of itself? Wait and watch without forcing an answer. See if a sense of presence, a watcher that is not the content, becomes clearer. After the 2 minutes, open your journal and write 1 line. What was different about noticing versus being identified with content? What may happen? You may simply find a quieter space between thought and reaction and report that. You may notice an immediate sense of openness or a slight decentering. You may notice nothing dramatic. That's fine. The practice is cumulative. Example micro-journal responses. Noticing. Thoughts were loud at first. After 90 seconds, I sensed a steadier background, like the sky behind the clouds. I kept saying, I am noticing, and felt a separate, calm tone. Nothing mystical, just a steady lens. No sudden epiphany, but a small easing. Noted one occasion later where I paused before answering. Why this matters? The shift isn't theatrical, it's functional. Practicing the movement from being thought to noticing thought increases metacognitive space. That space is the practical lever by which patterns soften and choices diversify. Evidence and small case examples across the souls. To make this concrete, here are 3 anonymized composite journal excerpts that show the trajectory from baseline to integration. They're constructed but grounded in typical, verifiable changes observed by people who do these practices with discipline. Composite Journal Case A, 30-Day Reality Journal. Day 1, Mood 5, Baseline, Reactive to Email, No Anchors Used. Day 7, Mood 5.5, Noted early morning stream of Not Enough, Did 5-minute labeling twice this week. Day 14, Mood 6, Anchors twice daily starting day 8, Realized Not Enough follows social scrolling, Implemented feed redesign. Day 21, Mood 6.5, Tracked 1 less reactive email and used source tracking before responding. Day 30, Mood 7, Outcome metric, calm client interactions, improved from 1 per week to 3 per week. Reflection, I felt the space to ask clarifying questions rather than defend. That created different outcomes. Composite Journal Case B, Identity Inventory. Week 1, 20 I am statements heavy in anxiety. Week 2, Source tracking reveals parental scarcity narrative. Week 3, Daily I am noticing practice shifts phrasing. Week 4, Embodiment tests, posture, small phrases, external feedback, colleagues more receptive, internal, less shame when asking for help. Composite Journal Case C, Collective Feed. Day 1, 3 hours social scrolling, multiple collective tags. Day 7, 7-day feed reset, replaced morning scroll with anchor, evening categorization shows fewer collective tags. Day 21, Mood up, labels show envy down 70%, notable result, more time for creative work, 2 small outputs shipped.
Safety reminders and final cautions. If you notice intrusive, violent, or overwhelming thoughts, seek professional care. These practices are supportive but are not substitutes for clinical therapy or medication. If practices bring up trauma memories or destabilization, shorten sessions and bring in a clinician or trusted support. These methods shift probability and clarity. They do not guarantee external outcomes like wealth, perfect health, or absolute control over others. Language of hope, not promise, is the ethical stance. Closing the arc, from stream to integration. You have now walked through the 7 lenses: stream, pattern, heart, collective, reality, identity, integrator. Each is a lever you can practice and measure. The map isn't a test you pass once, it's a living rhythm. When combined, daily attention, regular journaling, source tracing,
coherent physiology, curated exposure, identity rehearsal, and integration, the small shifts compound. If this finds you, your awakening begins now, not as a single theatrical event, but as the first line in a journal that becomes evidence. The title is not a promise of instant transcendence, it's an invitation. If this message reaches you, accept one small trial. One simple experiment to begin this minute. Set a timer for 60 seconds and do the micro experiment you did at the start again. When the timer ends, write one line. What appeared first? Place a notebook next to your bed and write that line. Then commit to 3 micro actions over the next 24 hours. A 5-minute labeling session tomorrow morning, 1 source tracking note when a charged thought arises, and an evening 5 to 10-minute categorization session. If you do this, you create your own baseline. The rest is iterative. Practice, measure, adjust. Final invitation, single CTA. If this reached you and you want a structured place to begin, start the 30-day reality response journal today. Use the phase structure above as your template. Week 1 baseline, Week 2 recognition, Week 3 intention, Week 4 documentation. Track 1 clear outcome metric and a daily mood rating. If you'd like the downloadable prompt to guide each day, follow the link in the description or watch the next short video in this series. It contains a printable journal template and a weekly tracker you can use right away. One last thought before you go. Awakening in this sense is not becoming something new in a cinematic overnight way. It is remembering a background capacity that was always present, the ability to observe, to choose, and to act from a quieter center. The 7 souls are practical checkpoints on that road. They are not commandments, they are experiments. If this finds you, your awakening begins now. May the small, repeated choices you make in the coming days become the evidence that transforms doubt into lived clarity.